The newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Well, hello there and a happy new year to you. It's good to be back, and boy, is there a lot to get stuck into. David Davis, he says that the Tories can turn things around, but they need to stand and fight. Is he right? And Rishi Sunak says that he's achieved his target of clearing the asylum backlog. But has he? Really? We'll get stuck into that. And did you see this story pop up, didn't it, during the Christmas break? The NHS hospital parking. We have spent a whopping £146 million in England alone. Is it time for us then to be more like Scotland, Wales, for example, and for those parking places to be free? How would you stop all the freeloaders basically using that space to park when they want to get their bargains in town? Tell me your thoughts on that. And the number of UK first-time buyers in 2023 was the lowest in a decade. Why do you think that might be, and what does it tell us about the housing market? And get this right, 9 out of 10 bicycle thefts since 2019 have gone unsolved. Dread to think how many people don't even bother reporting this anymore. Anyway, some saying that this kind of theft has now been decriminalised. Has it? And what does that mean for crime generally? Even if you don't have a bike, I say this kind of attitude not solving these crimes affects us all. We'll get stuck into all of that. Yes, indeed, lots to come. But before we do so, let's crack over to Polly Middlehurst for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Well, our top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that a senior Hamas official has been killed by an airstrike in Beirut in Lebanon. Saleh al-Aruri was the leader of the terrorist group's military wing in the West Bank, with links to Hezbollah, which has been involved in cross-border attacks on Israel's north in recent weeks. The Lebanese Prime Minister in the last hour condemned the blast, which is reportedly the result of an Israeli drone strike. Israel yet to comment on any involvement. Now, here, a new storm is on the radar. This time it's Storm Henk, and Storm Henk is already causing havoc, bringing very strong winds and heavy rain across much of southern England and Wales today. Trees have been uprooted, train operators are urging people not to travel because of the severe weather, and the Met Office accordingly issuing an amber and yellow warning, I should say, as coastal areas seeing gusts of up to 80 miles an hour. Forecasters warn there is a good chance of power cuts. Already seeing some informal reports of that on Twitter or X. They're saying as well there'll be damage to buildings, travel disruption we already know about, and a chance of injury or loss of life from flying debris. We'll be keeping tabs on Storm Henk here on GB News throughout the night. Now, the Home Secretary has insisted the government has cleared a backlog of migrant asylum applications, as critics accuse the government of fiddling the figures. The number of asylum case decisions made last year was the highest since 2002, as the government insisted its commitment to clearing the backlog has been delivered. Labour says, though, that's false, as reports suggest the reduced figure is in part due to some legacy cases being moved to other categories. But James cleverly says the number is coming down.
We have processed every single one of those applications. In the vast majority, a final decision has been made, and in a small number, there are complications. But the point is, we have now got a much, much faster process, which is why 50 hotels that were being used for housing asylum seekers are now being given back to the commercial world. So they can be put back into use as hotels. We're reducing the need to accommodate asylum seekers, and we'll be processing much more quickly going through 2024.
Cleverly. Well, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, disagrees. She says the government hasn't got the facts right.
Rishi Sunak's claim to have cleared the asylum backlog is just totally false. In fact, the figures are nearly 100,000 cases, and they haven't even fully cleared the bit of the backlog they were targeting. And that's why we've still got record numbers of people in asylum hotels costing the taxpayer a total fortune. Rishi Sunak should stop taking the country for fools, should stop the boasts and get on with delivering properly instead.
Yvette Cooper. Let's bring you up to date with events in Japan now, where 5 of the 6 crew on board a Japanese Coast Guard plane have been confirmed dead today after they collided with a passenger aircraft. But miraculously, 379 passengers and 12 crew on board that Japan Airlines aircraft it collided with were safely evacuated from the plane on inflatable emergency exit slides. Passengers saying they felt a large boom before smoke filled the cabin. The Coast Guard plane involved in that collision had been on its way to deliver aid to areas affected by a powerful earthquake that struck Japan on New Year's Day. NHS patients face further disruption tomorrow as junior doctors prepare to walk out in the health service's longest ever strike. An unprecedented 6 days of industrial action comes as the NHS faces one of its busiest winter periods. The government says it is open to further discussions, though hopes of last-minute talks to avoid strike action are now fading. Bosses are saying it could create one of the most difficult starts to the year the NHS has ever faced. The BMA wants junior doctors to get a 35% pay rise, which they say would restore their real earnings to levels seen in 2008. The government, though, says the demands are unaffordable. A student who ran over her fiancé, apparently after losing her temper following an argument, has been found guilty of murder. Alice Wood, who's 23 years old, drove her Ford Fiesta into her partner Ryan Watson, aged 24, near their home in Cheshire in May last year. She denied murder and an alternative count of manslaughter, claiming his death was a tragic accident. She told Chester Crown Court she didn't realise he was trapped underneath her car when she drove for 158 metres before stopping. Miss Wood showed no emotion as the jury returned a unanimous verdict. She's been remanded in custody, with the judge warning she may never be released. Ryan's mother, Lisa Watson, told reporters afterwards that her son had been taken too soon.
We finally got justice for our beloved Ryan. Ryan's death has left our family heartbroken. He was taken from us far too soon. Just a young man of 24 years old, with his whole life ahead of him. He had just started his working career with the charities at Headways, with helping other people, which he loved to do. Ryan had just a big personality. He was bubbly, fun-loving, caring person with a heart of gold.
Lisa Watson, who lost her son, Ryan Watson. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Did you notice? Those who've got good ears might have noticed at the start of the show, I introduced my programme and then I said, but before we do that, let's crack over to, Polly, what I was going to say is let's crack open a bottle. I think I'm in a little bit too much of the festive spirit, I've got to say. I hope you all had a good one, whatever you were doing, and I hope you managed to avoid all that stuff on New Year's Eve where everyone's posting about how amazingly happy they all are and how amazingly wonderful their lives are. I hate all that because it makes you look inwards and go, good God, what am I doing wrong? Anyway, I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib. Also, I've got an empty chair, everybody, because you've just been hearing about Storm Henk in the headlines. Look at that. What a dashing chair that is. Anyway, sitting imminently on that chair, I'm going to have the Senior Lecturer at Queen Mary University, Richard Johnson, but he is stuck on a delayed train. I love this. This is so British, isn't it? A new year, 2024. And you can always guarantee that the travel is going to be disrupted. But I've got to say, this storm does not look like it is a great one. So wherever you are, I hope you are all staying safe. And you know the drill, don't you? You can get in touch with us all the usual ways. gbviews@gbnews.com is how you email me, or you can tweet me, X me, or whatever you want to call it, at GB News. There is a lot I want to talk to you guys about tonight. This might seem like a small issue, right? But I don't actually think it is. Bike theft. Have you had a bike that has been stolen? Did you even bother reporting it to the police? Many people now say that this crime is basically being decriminalised, and I think it is a sign of something much broader when it comes to our attitudes when fighting crime, preventing crime, intervening in crime. So I want to unpick that story before the end of the programme. I also want to talk to you as well about these asylum claims, whether or not this government has fixed the backlog. Has it, do you think? And did you see that story that popped up over Christmas about hospital car parks? 140-odd million quid, apparently, we've been spending here in England. Do we need to follow the Scots, basically, and make it free? I think they do the same in Wales as well. And how do you stop all those chancers using it as a free car park, basically, when they want to go shopping? Give me your thoughts on that. Also, Mr Habib, Reform, one of the things I want to get stuck into with you tonight as well is about the polling. There's been a lot of polling coming out about you guys, putting you at about 10%.
Yeah, and I think we've had half a dozen polls putting us at 10% or higher. And that's twice where we were 3 months ago. So, you know, there's definitely a sea change in people's attitudes towards the two main parties. And, you know, thankfully, we're doing well off the back of it. And if we can bring some sense to the political landscape in 2024, that would be a wish come true.
But let me be blunt. Do you think... Let me be blunt. I mean, I'm going to start my year as I mean to go on.
Yeah.
Do you think Reform can actually achieve anything, or will it just split the vote?
Well, when you say split the vote, do you mean between the con-socialists and the socialists?
Well, what
otherwise
I mean...
known as the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, respectively? You know, if you vote for the Conservatives, what are you going to get? They've delivered high taxation, they've delivered massive spending, they've delivered massive borrowing. They've turned their backs on the history, culture, values of the United Kingdom. They've opened up our borders, record legal migration, completely uncontrolled illegal migration. Why would you think that they deserve to be in office any more than Keir Starmer does, who doesn't deserve to be in office?
But there'll be a lot of people.
Neither party does.
There'll be a lot of people of the right and they perhaps, I don't know, traditionally have an affiliation with the Tories, maybe their parents voted Tory, maybe they've always voted Tory or whatever. Absolutely. So even if it's just a connection and a loyalty to the Tories, you've got those set of people. You've got the set of people that actually, because who knows what's going to happen between now and the next election? Anything can happen. They can turn it all around, and we're going to come on to David Davis's letter in a second, you know, where they believe that it's not a lost cause yet, the next election. So there is a potential that those votes could be split, and we saw that. I mean, I saw that in my seat where I call home, which is Hull West and Hessel in the 2019 election. What we basically did is we split the Brexit vote, and then the Labour Party got re-elected, even though more people had collectively voted against Labour than for them.
Yeah, but, you know, we're not in business. Reform UK didn't form in order to be a weather vane or some kind of navigating yardstick for the Conservative Party. We came about because people like me, who would otherwise be perfectly happy running their business, were tearing their hair out at the state of the nation and the inability of either party to govern. And so if the Conservative Party, by some miracle, started being conservative, protecting the United Kingdom, promoting conservative values, reducing taxes, reducing regulation, getting rid of this ridiculous, inexorable march to economic emasculation that is net zero. If they started doing all of that, they wouldn't have people like us, but they won't start doing it. I know we're going to talk about David Davis's letter.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's get out. That's a nice segue. Talk about it.
But I'll just quickly finish. But they won't do it because they're impregnated with something called One Nation Conservatives. They're the largest part of their parliamentary party, and they're basically Liberal Democrats. They don't believe in conservative values. So they talk about being a broad church and having a broad set of values. What they are is a divided church, unable to craft an ideology and absolutely unable to deliver conservative policies. They don't deserve to be in office.
One of the letter that we're referring to, David Davis wrote in the Mail. He's writing Happy New Year to all of the Tory faithful and all the rest of it. And he references a few different elections, 1992, 1997. He references medieval battles, and he's basically a rallying cry. It's basically a rallying cry to, I would say, his own party, talking about what you're just referring to then, about infighting. And he says, and I found this line quite interesting, discipline wins elections just as it wins battles. And one of the challenges that the Tory party have got, and I cannot understand for the life of me how people that are actually in politics don't grasp this. When you turn and divide and argue among yourself, not only are you neglecting the voters and the things that actually matter up and down in the country,
absolutely,
you are just tearing your vote apart, because now what people are doing is going, right, do I want that? Do I want this? Do I want this? Are they the party? You're distracting, and you're just creating your own self-destruction.
Yeah, so what's happened with the Conservative Party since Margaret Thatcher left office, and it's progressively happened, is that they have tacked left in order to try and see off Labour. And they've become an incredibly effective election-winning machine. And it was all fine, well and good, until they actually faced some challenges, which required an ideology, a vision for where they wish to take the United Kingdom, and an ability to unify their party to deliver that vision. But by tacking left, by having these one nation lot amongst the ERG and the other four families, the name of which escaped me at the moment, but what you might call traditional centre-right Conservatives in the Conservative Party, by having that mixture in Parliament, what they've done is made themselves incapable of navigating difficulties. Because the minute they hit a difficulty, as we did with Brexit, which was very challenging for Parliament altogether because they couldn't get their heads around delivering what the people voted for, you hit a challenge like Brexit, you hit a challenge like lockdowns, COVID lockdowns and so on, and you can't get a coherent, ideologically based, sound response from the Conservative Party. They are not a broad church. They are a divided church. So the arguments to which you're referring, which David Davis would have them shut up about, are arguments that are coming from within their own party because they don't believe in the same things. They were always going to end up in conflict amongst themselves because they don't have a unified vision. And without a unified vision, they don't deserve to be in office. One of the examples he gave was the 1986 election. 1987 election for Margaret Thatcher. Having been very unpopular in 1986, she got a landslide in 87. She got the landslide because there was clear blue water
between the two
parties. You knew what the Conservative Party stood for, and you knew if you voted for it, Margaret Thatcher would deliver it. But you can't trust this party to deliver anything they promise in, and they're more like Labour than ever.
Well, Martin, my viewer, says if you vote Reform, Michelle, it's simple. You are basically making way for a Labour government. And he's reflecting, I guess, the point that I mentioned to you at the start, which is, how do you know you're just not going to split the votes? Graham says, please can you ask Ben, would Reform consider a Tory Reform coalition?
No, we're not doing any deals with the Tories. The Tories have had ample opportunity to become Conservative. If you vote Tory, you're getting Labour.
It's not about splitting the vote. More Tory.
This is not about splitting the vote. You vote Tory, you're getting Labour. You're getting Labour policies. Look at the symptoms of our economy.
If you vote Reform, aren't you going to end up getting Labour?
If you vote Reform, there is a chance that you will get Reform UK MPs. There's a chance that this country's interests will be put first in a way that the two major parties have completely turned their backs on. The only way of making change is to vote for it. And voting for the same old people again and again, hoping that they might mend their ways, is a recipe for disaster. And the other line that people put to me, the Conservatives put out, is, we know we're awful, but Labour are worse. That's essentially the line that's being taken this evening. That is no way to govern a country. Voting for someone because they're less bad than the other lot. Vote for something you believe in. We are going to give the people of this country a genuine democratic choice between the failed policies of Labour and the Conservatives and Reform UK.
So speaking about things that we believe in, Rishi Sunak, he's been loud and proud today. I think I can show you one of his tweets where he's basically saying that he's achieved one of his targets, which is the asylum backlog. Many people within seconds, actually. So his tweet, there you go. I'll read it if you're listening. Asylum backlog is cleared. Many people are saying that's misleading, false information and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, many people are right. It is completely misleading. We had, I can't remember his first name now, but the civil service chap responsible for migration, Ridley, I think is his surname, admitting to Lee Anderson in a parliamentary committee that actually they didn't know where 17,000 absconded asylum seekers had gone. So, well, that's 17,000 out of the numbers. Then the other trick that they play is that they decline your asylum application, but they give you leaves to stay and the ability to work, give you 2 or 3 years to stay, as I understand it, and then you can apply again to stay for further periods. So even though your asylum application's been declined, actually you're taken out of the asylum queue, and it looks like they're dealing with the asylum problem, but they haven't dealt with it. They've just sidestepped it. And then, of course, we all know that they moved away from interviews towards a completely paper-based system so they could speed through 12,000 applications. Most of those were given consent to in short order. And then the last thing that we all know about is the government telling interviewing officers that they shouldn't press the asylum seekers too hard if they suspect a mistruth.
But what would you do about it, Ben?
Well, you know what I would do about it, Michelle. I would
remind all of my brand new viewers that I've gained over the Christmas period. Tell them.
Do not deal with illegal migration through deportation. Deportation is what you do when border control has failed.
So what would you do then?
You have to stop the boats in the channel. You need a determined, well-trained... I can give you millions of ways to do it, but you can
give me a top one. Give me a top one.
Well, you need a well-trained bunch of guys, probably ex-SBS or current SBS, who can move at speed, who can challenge people in the channel and use the international law that we have on our side to repel these boats back into French waters. It is an absolute affront to international law.
And if
that
people
the French Navy...
if people tell you, because what you're talking about, Ben, is a turn-back, push-back operation, and immediately people will say to you, your policy, you are going to endanger lives in the channel.
Absolutely. Lives may be endangered, but it's not us endangering those lives. The lives that are being endangered are lives that have put themselves in that position willingly, having paid money to do it, coming from a safe country. You cannot infantilize people to the point where if they put themselves in harm's way, you will bend over backwards and allow them to break the law in order to avoid the harm that they have perpetuated for themselves.
Well, what do you guys make to it at home? Yvette Cooper, she's also been writing a letter today talking about, well, not today, but talking about her plan. She says that this whole channel crossing situation is basically chaos. We know all this, don't we? They reckon that their plan would be to invest more in clamping down on the people smuggler gangs, additional resource, she says 1,000 additional staff when it comes to processing these people, and all the rest of it. Do you think that the Labour Party have the answers? If not, do you think Reform has got the answers? Has anyone got the answers, quite frankly, to stopping this situation in the Channel? Do you believe Rishi Sunak when he puts that bold claim out that he has indeed met his target? Lots of you guys getting in touch on that. Terry, there, don't mean to be blunt, but he says, I like Ben Habib, but I've got to be blunt, he doesn't see Reform as a threat. Do you think Reform are a threat to Tories? I'll let you be the judge of that. Kitty says, Christmas was basically ruined because she couldn't get hold of the Ben Habib calendar that I'd promised prior. She asks if I can indeed try and make it happen. Susan says, I can't believe I just switched back on the telly. Michelle didn't even spend the Christmas break having any elocution lessons. I've got to break it to you, Susan. I've been with my family the entire time in the north, so my accent's probably worse than what it was before I left. But Glenn, he says, welcome back to my favourite gobby northern bed. I've been called worse. I'll take that as a compliment. There you go. Lots to crack into with the show for the rest of the hour. Keep your thoughts coming in. I'll see you in a couple of minutes. I want to talk to you about hospital parking and also bike theft as well. Has it been decriminalised in this country? And if so, what is the impact of that? You tell me.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, the government claims to have cleared the asylum backlog. Nigel Farage joins us to blow the lid off that. Who are we letting in? Where are they living? And what is the cost to the taxpayer? The Jeffrey Epstein files are set to be released today. I speak to a source very close to the Epstein investigation. Should King Charles abdicate? The Queen of Denmark has done so. Is it time for Charles to make way for William and Kate? And will Labour turn Britain into a woke hellscape? Cash-strapped Labour councils are checking businesses' LGBTQ+ credentials to make sure that they fit their agenda. All of that and more on Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. The Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, is alongside me. In any moment now, I've got wind of the fact that he's literally a few minutes away. Senior lecturer at Queen Mary University, Richard Johnson. He's been held up by the storm, as many of you perhaps will have been or will be tonight. Let me know if you are one of them. We were just talking before the break just about reform and what you guys would do about these channel crossings. Pell says, and I'm gonna just summarise a bit because it was a fairly long email. In essence, she's saying you can basically say whatever you want because you're not in power. The reality of some of your suggestions, though, would never come to pass. Basically, when you're saying about pushback, what she's saying is that you'd have to bring all the different factions with you. She's asking, how do you think France would respond and the EU would respond to your pushback strategy? And how on earth, she says, do you think you'd get it past her where it's all the lefties in this country?
Well, first of all, the critical point here is that you have international law on your side. Article 33 of the UN Convention of Law of the Sea entitles us to take preventative measures against people seeking illegally to enter the country. That's the first point. The second point is they're not protected by lefty laws, as you put them, or lefty lawyers, or indeed the ECHR until they are on a British boat or British territory.
No, that was Marge's point about the lefties, and I think she means the lefties within this country that would never even allow such a law to be passed.
So,
Not,
but you don't need a law. You don't need a law. You have the law on your side.
It's about enacting it, you say.
It's about using the law determinedly. But the thing, just to prove that it can be done, when Belarus was trying to export illegal migrants to Poland, Poland put a metal fence up and it parked its army behind it, fully armed. Those illegal migrants did not try to cross that border.
Well, you guys can have the final say. Gary, one of my viewers, you're a man after my own heart because you say, where do all these polling people get these figures from? Who are the people that they poll? You say nobody's ever polled me or anyone I know about anything. I always say that. I'm like a stuck record when it comes to polling. I've never been polled for anything in my life. Anyway, look who's joined us. Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
You've braved the storm. He's not even got a glass of water. He's not even given a glass of water. You're straight in. I will try and organise liquid refreshments, but what a trooper. What's wrong with the British travel in this country when it comes to bad weather?
I made the perilous journey of a simple train into London, 80 minutes delayed. That's my start to 2024.
Well, I don't want to make your start to 2024 any worse, but I dread to think what it's going to be like going back.
Let's not even think about it.
Let's not. Yeah, we'll forget that. We'll talk about car parking instead. Okay. So, you know, if you don't want to be on the trains risking all of that, you can always drive to your destination instead. But let's hope it's not a hospital, because get this, I saw this story pop up over the Christmas break, and it's all about how much we're spending when it comes to NHS hospital parking. The costs in England have risen by 50%. Apparently, we forked out a massive £146 million in 2023. Now, I'll give you a moment to catch your breath, so I shall start with you on this one, Ben, because I know you've literally ran for us, which I appreciate. In places like Scotland, for etc., the parking there is free. The Tories spoke very tough about this in terms of reducing these costs, making them free in various different places, etc. Should this parking be free?
Well, I mean, it depends, obviously, on the specific car park involved and whether it's being used by people for purposes other than visiting patients or, you know, by staff for parking for legitimate reasons. I mean, clearly, car parks, my business operates lots of car parks across the country, and we have specific policies for different car parks depending on how they're being used and what they're being used for.
Do you run hospital car parks?
No, we don't. Commercial car parks. But some commercial car parks are abused by people who aren't shopping. Or office car parks are abused by people who don't have offices in the building, and so we take preventative measures, and we do it by exclusion. So we will have number plate recognition for staff. We will have 2 hours free parking for retailers, followed by a penalty if you're there for over a protracted period. For cinemas, we might give you, if you've got a cinema ticket, you might get a further period, and there are ways to do it. But I think this is part of the war on the car. You know, they want to deter users of cars. They want people to get to these locations using public transport as much as possible. And we've seen this at airports. You want to drop someone off at an airport, it's £5 now.
Indeed. He's caught his breath now, Richard. Go.
Well, it may not just be about attacking motorists, but it may also be about trying to plug funding in the NHS. And so some hospitals trusts might regard parking charges as a way of trying to make up funding shortfalls. And I think there is an issue that ideally we'd like to say free parking for hospitals. But if you have a hospital that's near a train station or a place where people shop, then that runs the risk actually of making it harder for people to actually get into the hospital to see their family members and loved ones who might be there because people who aren't using the hospital are using the free parking. So I think you could try and do it in a smart way, like some of the ways that Ben said, maybe 2 hours, number plate recognition and so on. But that will cost money in the short term. You have to put the infrastructure in to do it. So it's not...
It's quite cheap, by the way.
Yeah.
And the people who put the infrastructure in are prepared to do it for free if you give them the right to take the fines, because they see that as their
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's not something you can just sort of say, wave a wand overnight and say, next week they'll all be free. So there is a little bit of preparation that goes on. It's not insurmountable, but I think that it's not either everywhere charges all the time or everything's free. I think there's probably got to be a middle ground struck there.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely eye-watering. So Coventry in Warwickshire, £5 million. That is the income that they got from their car parking. Derby Burton, 3.5 million. Leicester, nearly 3 million, and so on and so forth. I believe now, like to your point, you say that hospitals potentially plugging funding gaps. I think the motorist now is seen as an ATM now for so many failures of funding. As you mentioned ULEZ, but I think there's so many councils who fundamentally fail at one of their most basic tasks, which is balancing your books. And actually, because they're so inept at what they're supposed to be doing, they see motorists as their opportunity. Right, you know, we can fail, but it's all right because we're gonna get these guys anywhere we can get them, whether it's parking, whether it's permits, whether it's fines, you name it, they're on us.
Well, often what you see is the cart being put before the horse. I mean, I think it is right for there to be a shift to try to encourage people not to drive if there are alternatives. But the issue is, in so many parts of the country, there aren't good, regular, reliable alternatives, as I've discovered just taking the train here today. And so, I mean, when I think about it, it makes me think perhaps I should have just driven into London today. And that's part of the problem as well, is that you know, if all you do if you make it harder to drive and you don't have the public infrastructure there, is you just lead to misery. And actually sometimes people just disengaging entirely. And this has an impact, we're talking about hospitals, but this has an impact for the high street, because people won't want to go in and shop. If it becomes harder to either park or to get in through public transport, they'll just stay at home and they'll shop online. So we've got to think very carefully both about when we make it harder to park or harder to use your car, but also if we've not put in the public transport infrastructure there as well.
Yeah, what do you think? Are you a motorist? Are you someone that actually thinks that things are going a little bit too far now when it comes to penalising the motorist? Are you a non-driver that actually supports all of this stuff and thinks, do you know what, actually, yes, I do want fewer cars on the road, so you support some of these measures? Are you a councillor, perhaps, that is struggling to balance your books and you sit there and think all is fair when it comes to funding for your councils? Get in touch and let me know all your thoughts on that. Also, speaking of transport, have you got a bicycle? Because for many people, this really is one of their primary, if not literally, is their lifeline sometimes to get to work, to get wherever. If you get your bicycle stolen, it really is an impact on your life. Do you think we take this crime seriously? Because now there's suggestions that we've decriminalised bicycle theft in this country. And if you ask me, this is symptomatic of a much bigger issue. We'll talk about that before the end of the programme. But next, I want to ask you, why have we got so few first-time buyers in this country? And what does it say about the housing market here?
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me tonight, I've got Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, and the Senior Lecturer at Queen Mary University, Richard Johnson. Yvonne's been in touch saying, Michelle, parking at hospitals is not all bad. You've gone on to tell me that you've got cancer, which I'm very sorry to hear, and I wish you a speedy recovery. But your message was to say that the hospital that you're at has given you free parking, and there's quite a few of you that's got in touch with similar stories to that as well. Let's talk housing, shall we? The number of first-time buyers, apparently, that have bought a house with a mortgage in 2023, get this, apparently it's the lowest number in a decade. Let me come straight to you. What do you think this tells us about the state of the property market in this country, Richard?
I think it shows that there's not enough supply. And we have a growing population. We have a population where people live longer. And so people who already have a home, you know, it's a good thing. They live longer, but they stay in their homes for a longer period of time. So homes aren't coming up as much, and that means that we have to be more aggressive about building homes. The other thing I'd say is that it also reflects a distorted employment market where jobs are disproportionately concentrated in the southeast. So that puts more demand on housing in the southeast as well. So one way that you could alleviate some of the housing problem also would be to consider, in my view, a more robust industrial strategy where you would think about relocating more jobs outside of the southeast to try and balance not just employment but housing.
So you'd make people redundant here?
You would incentivise companies and the public sector, but also I think you should incentivise the private sector through tax incentives to actually relocate some of their operations to other parts of the UK. And
where would you build? You're talking about building these new houses and supply. Where would you put these new houses?
Well, we actually, I mean, there's a lot of the country that isn't built on. And there is space to do responsible expansion of housing supply one of the problems I think sometimes people have is that
on the green belt and stuff like that, for example?
We might have to look at the green belt in some areas. We're operating under a kind of set of strictures that were set after the Second World War, when the population was very different than it is today. But also I think part of the problem is that when we do have new housing, it's often done badly, poor quality, it's not very attractive. And so I think it'd be important as well, if government was serious about this, to think about actually doing design that actually looks nice and is attractive and is the kind of home that someone would want to start a family and raise a family in.
You're not just a man of car parks, you're a man of property. Ben Habib, what do you make to it all?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with a great deal of what you just said, Richard. And I think what you alluded to with an industrial strategy for the country was that, of course, the country isn't operating as one country. We have the South East, which is an economic engine for the United Kingdom, and we haven't levelled up the rest of the country, which successive governments have said they're going to do. There's no shortage of housing in the UK. We lack housing where people want it, which is in the South East. And if we could have a proper economic policy that genuinely incentivised the creation of sustainable jobs up north, not chucking a few million quid at the problem, plastering over the cracks and hoping the problem goes away, but actually creating, for example, Newcastle, Manchester, great universities, make them internationally great universities, not just domestically, but international. Put them right at the top of the list. Get research facilities around them. Get businesses building up.
So you want more immigration into those cities to bolster their university attendance?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying make them research centres of excellence, so businesses congregate round them the way they have around Oxford and Cambridge. That's just one example. But tax breaks, critical component about getting the country levelled up, not about chucking money at things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, which Richard didn't mention, is the massive amount of migration we've had. And, last year we had net migration of 775,000 or whatever it was. Well, that's another 300,000, 200,000 homes just there. And we're building about 150,000 new homes each year. Migration puts a huge strain on the infrastructure of this country, and we're seeing that in the housing market. And so we've got to address that. And in addition to all of that, by the way, I don't think we need to build on the green belt. There is so much brownfield development that could take place but doesn't take place because of a turgid planning system and lack of imagination from home builders. They want green fields because they can plonk their little housing estates with their 2 up, 2 down, pre-designed, prefab, soulless estates all over the country. That's what housing builders want. But actually force them into using brownfield sites. Get them to reuse redundant office buildings, which are now going begging, for example, because of lockdowns and work from home habits. Get that supply back in. There's so much that could be done.
Final word to you.
And I'd just say also that we have a local government system here that incentivises blocking the construction of
Absolutely
houses.
right, yeah.
And for councillors who sit on planning committees and so on, the electoral pressures for them are from people who already live in those areas, and people who already live in those areas tend to be more resistant to building new housing. And so actually sometimes I think it requires central government to take a stronger hand here and to think more strategically. That's about not just about building houses for the sake of building houses, but building houses in places where you could also bring employment.
What do you make to it at home? And when we talk about levelling up, I have noticed as well a lot of cities outside of the South East, the house prices there are starting to absolutely rocket. Is that the kind of levelling up that we want to see in this country or not? Eileen says, Michelle, you're talking about hospital parking, but surely hospital parking should just be for disabled people. Should it? You tell me. I'll see you in a couple of minutes. When I come back, I want to talk to you, not about cars anymore, but about bikes. Have you ever had one stolen? So many of them now, these thefts, are going basically unresolved. I think this is symptomatic of a much bigger problem in this country when it comes to the attitudes to crime. Would you intervene if you saw somebody nicking a bike on your street corner? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry, 7 Deputy Leader of Reform UK Ben Habib and the Senior Lecturer at Queen Mary University Richard Johnson alongside me. Lots of you getting in touch again about this hospital parking. John says, Michelle, this is a moral issue. No one goes to hospital for enjoyment, he says. Therefore, it definitely should be free. Yvonne says Sandra says she's given blood for decades and now because of a parking issue at a local centre, she's perhaps having to reconsider. That is a real shame, isn't it? John says, Michelle, your guests don't understand agriculture. They're clearly city folk. If you keep on building on Greenbelt, where on earth do they think your food is going to come from? There you go. We'll perhaps delve into that one a little bit more on a future date. But for now, I want to talk to you about an issue that I actually think is very important. Bike theft in the UK. It's now being said that it's effectively being decriminalised. Get this, nearly 400,000 cases of this have been unsolved over the last 5 years. That will be just the tip of the iceberg because so many people now won't be bothered to go to the police. And if you do, it's only for a crime number, so you can make an insurance claim if indeed you had it insured in the first place. But anyway, I think this is symptomatic of a much bigger issue. Bikes for people, they're often lifelines. Many of you have got in touch with me today about your stories of having your bikes nicked. It really affects people's lives. But I think it's even symptomatic of a more broader issue about how we are dealing with petty crime, although some would say it's not petty, in this country, how we're dealing with intervening in crime, because if you saw someone nicking a bike, would you actually do anything? If they're there with their tools, got to admit, I probably wouldn't. What do you make to it all?
Well, I think police forces are constantly making kind of cost-benefit analysis for the amount of efforts required to investigate a crime and what is the conceivable payoff. And what I think you're right, that what they've decided with thefts of kind of personal belongings under a certain number of pounds is that goes pretty much to the bottom of the priority list. And that's a problem because once criminals perceive that that's the way that the police operate, then that gives criminals a sense of a license to take with a certain degree of impunity. I mean, I'll say that I had a bike stolen not that long ago, and the police would contact me. They did actually get some CCTV from a nearby block of flats, and they did look at the CCTV, saw someone in a hood sawing my bike off and taking it away, and that was the end of the story. But the thing I think that frustrates people a lot is when I've heard about individuals who have taken it upon themselves to try to locate their bikes or their mobile phones, and actually can track them, and they go to the police with this evidence and say, I know where it is. I've heard of instances where, even in those instances, the police don't take them up, and I think that's wrong.
Ben?
Well, I think Richard again has hit the nail very squarely on the head when he talked about the requirement for people to believe that if they break the law, they will be apprehended and they will suffer the consequences of their misdeeds. But we're embedding in people the belief that actually they can challenge the judicial system, the law and order system, and get away with it. And policing, you're never going to have enough policemen. You're never going to have enough policemen. People have to believe that they will be apprehended. And that's a different thing.
But that ship sailed, Ben. They know that they're not.
That ship has sailed. And so we're in a spiral out of which it'll be very difficult to get out.
So what would you do then?
Well, I mean, you do not call stuff petty crime and not deal with it.
So what do you do then?
You have to have a zero-tolerance approach. You have to become ruthless.
What, like a New York broken windows
style?
Giuliani-style
New York 30 years ago, whenever it was, and absolutely take people to task until that connection between a misdeed and being brought to justice is reaffirmed. Sadly, serious crime, only 2% of serious crime ends up in a conviction. That is very, very low. Any would-be criminal doing his due diligence would realise it actually pays to be a criminal. And I think the other aspect here, that's the big point, but the other aspect here is that the police see a lot of this crime through a kind of insurance prism. They think, well, if the item's insured, and a lot of bicycles will be insured through a household policy, your car is insured, they won't bother with the car because, well, you can go and make a claim against insurance. If Asda suffers a lot of thievery, they'll say, well, go and claim it from your insurers. But the point about a system that operates like that is that the cost for everything goes up for everyone. And you have to have your own private security, you pay more for insurance, there's a breakdown in societal structures, and the problem goes on and on and on. And we've got to get a grip of this. We've got to stop spending money on woke nonsense and get the police, ceasing to dance the Macarena and actually going out and apprehending criminals and bringing them to justice.
And ultimately, also, in these types of crimes, what people just want is they want their belongings returned to them. When I had my bike stolen, the police, they never found the bikes, but they offered victim counselling if I wanted to take it up.
And did you want to take it up?
No, I didn't want to take it up because I just wanted my bike back.
I know. Who needs victim counselling? Get my bike back!
So if you saw, because you said the police had seen the CCTV, this fella, he's got his hood up and he's robbing your bike. If you saw him in the act, would you try and stop him?
I probably would, but I realise that maybe not everyone would feel comfortable being able to do that. And I also think that we have to be careful of creating a system where, I think there should be some kind of social pressure for people not to commit crimes in broad daylight. I mean, to be fair, this wasn't in broad daylight, but also we can't put the tasks of the police on ordinary citizens. We can't have a kind of vigilante system either.
You say about social pressure to stop people committing crime. I would argue it's gone completely the other way now because of things like social media. There's a lack of social pressure. There's almost a social kudos. So if you film yourself with your stupid hood up and your bandana on or whatever it is, running into a shop and helping yourself to armfuls of God only knows what, and off you go, you get high-fived, you get clicks, you get likes, and you get kudos online. So it's gone completely the other way. Harry, one of my viewers says, Michelle, the rule of law has all but collapsed in this country and the criminals absolutely know this. So many of you getting in touch with me, telling me the stories about your bikes being stolen, your loved ones being stolen. One of my viewers getting in touch, her son set up an e-bike company. This is June, her son, and she says it literally took no time at all until someone started stealing their property. Where are the bobbies on the beat? So many people are lacking being seen when it comes to policing. I think that is a key point in this country. I've got to say, it's really depressing, isn't it? Happy 2024, everyone. Thanks, gents. See you tomorrow. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Storm Henk is now moving through. Wind easing and rain clearing to showers overnight, but it does stay blustery into Wednesday and the next few days. In fact, as low pressure continues to dominate, but this was Storm Henk earlier on Tuesday. It's now moving into the North Sea. The worst of the conditions then easing across the UK, but we'll see further rain across eastern England for a time. And north and east Scotland will see further persistent rain with snow for Shetland. Meanwhile, blustery showers push in to the rest of the UK. Of course, the wind keeping things frost-free overnight, except for Shetland, where we've got snow building up over the hills. And for many of us, it is a blustery start to Wednesday. Gales for the far southwest, exposed coastal parts, but the wind won't be as strong across southern parts of the UK compared with Tuesday. Those showers will make their way from west to east. In between the showers, there will be some sunny spells, but those showers will be lively, gusty winds, perhaps even some thunder and hail towards the southwest, and some longer spells of wet weather in the far north, where it will feel cold, mid-single figures here, mild in the south, 11 or 12 degrees. A bright start in the south on Thursday, but further rain turns up across the south and southwest as we go into the morning. Some sunshine clinging on across Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia into the afternoon, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's cloudy with further showers. Friday sees a few showers in many places, but by Saturday, higher pressure will lead to drier weather across the UK.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me